Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. As you know, we have really looked at launching a campaign about people who are making a global impact. And it's all about really the stories of those people and how they've used their stories to make an impact, but also the change in the world that as a result of their story and their impact has happened. And so, Sarah, we'd love to hear a little bit about your story. Could you begin by just sharing some of the sentinel events, things that you think about that shaped your story over time? You know, what kind of punctuation marks, if you will, in your story do you think about?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Scott, for inviting me. I'm delighted to participate in the campaign, Make a Global Impact. We all should be doing everything we can in today's world to change the course of history. You know, when I think about my life's arc, I think I first really understood the international and interconnected nature of the world when I did junior year abroad in France. I was at the University of Connecticut studying French literature, spent a year in France. It was the first time that I was outside the country as an American, looking back at my country through the lens of a different, experience, right? And also understanding it from a European experience. What were they commenting on in terms of, say, U.S. politics or whatever? So that was a very important moment in my life to have that advantage of that outside gaze, right? Going back in. A very introspective, very, very reflective opportunity for me. And I think also at that point, yes, I discovered European culture, which was fascinating. I love history. But then there are so many immigrants and immigrant communities in France. It was the first time I actually had very solid exposure to, say, West African communities that were living in Paris or Rouen, where I was going to school. And so, in a more informal, casual way, got to understand a little bit more about African culture. And I think I was probably hooked at that point. I didn't know it, but, it was just fascinating for me to speak with people and get a sense of what they're all about and why they were in France and what they were hoping to achieve. So that's kind of sort of youth, older adolescent while in college. Then after I got out of school, I went to Boston, got my first job, and it was in fact international. And so I was working on recruiting nurses and doctors for hospitals in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That was a fascinating experience. But from there, I took my first course for my master's in public health at Boston University, and it opened up a whole new world for me. And I remember the first article I read was by Irene Tinker, who, look how things work. She, of course, was the founding president of the International Center for Research on Women. And there I was reading her back in, 1982, and just so amazed by her. And I actually went to work for Boston University School of Public Health. And, it was just my dream come true, right? Because they said, all right, you're going to be our university liaison with all of these universities across the world. And so suddenly I'm traveling to China, I'm traveling to Indonesia, I'm traveling to the Philippines, I'm traveling to Nepal, and building out these university to university linkages. And I think that that was just a concrete moment, in my career. CARE. I worked with CARE for 11 years. Scott, oh my goodness. I mean, I couldn't do Peace Corps for whatever reason. I think I missed out on the recruitment day that they might have had at the University of Connecticut. But I feel as though my 11 years at CARE, where I was always in countries in sub-Saharan Africa, working, so deeply in communities, was that Peace Corps experience. Really understanding community dynamics, the wisdom, the resilience of communities, understanding the importance of research, and helping communities build, I would say, justifications for the kinds of requests they were making, to local authorities and things like that. And this was the first time I really understood the situation of women and girls in these kinds of societies. And yes, sort of the oppression that gender was placing upon them, but also their amazing resilience and ability to navigate very difficult moments in their lives. So that was all in Africa, right? You see that nice little line, right? from meeting Africans in Paris, right through to being in Togo and Zambia and Ethiopia and Mali and Cote d'Ivoire with CARE. And then, finally, I think it was that moment when I really understood the power of data, because donors were saying, okay, intuitively that sounds wonderful, but how are you going to prove that you've made the progress that you promised in the proposal? How are you going to, help the ministry change the way it's doing certain kinds of public health programs if you don't have that data, right, that proves your point? And so that was a moment where all of my education, my master's and my PhD, sort of came together in this moment. And then it was ICRW, it was the International Center for Research on Women. And honestly, I thought I was going to come back for 2 years and move on to another job, and I fell in love. And 19 years later, I still believe in this passion, proof, and power, right? It's just fundamental to good decision-making, investment strategy. It's the only way to rock and roll.
That's fantastic, Sarah. You've got such an extraordinary story. And I know on a personal front, you've also fell in love with Africa. Is that right?
That's right. Scott, you know my backstory. So, for our viewers, I met a wonderful, brilliant man from the Ivory Coast when I was in Boston. He was also doing his PhD in economics. And my goodness, he was my soulmate. And so for the past 36 years, my husband, Kambou, and I have, been in Africa together, he working with USAID or Oxford or Harvard, me doing my care work. And we have 2 beautiful children. They're biracial. Our son, Christoph, is like 6'5". We don't know where he got that height, but, he's a very talented chef and is cooking here in the DC area. And our daughter, Elise, who looks so much like my sister-in-law, it's just so amazing. She's 26 and working on, her master's and doing a lot of work in the global development space. So as a white woman married to a Black man, we have had to navigate everyday racism for our entire time together. And so it's been very important what we've experienced across the past year, the racial justice movement here, not only in the United States, but across the world. This has deep resonance in our family, and it's generated, I think, some challenging conversations. What do we do about it as a family? What do I do about it as a white woman? How do I go beyond being an ally? How do I actually promote and help end systemic racism? And if there's anybody who keeps me on the straight and narrow, it's my daughter, Elise, who's very read in, to all of the theory and the campaigning, behind racial justice. And so we have lots of conversations about what mom can do better, what mom's doing great. I think that these are brave conversations and they're not easy, but when you've got such a tight family unit, they're the right conversations to have at this time.
Absolutely. And we all have to recognize and try to learn where we are in that journey if we're to make progress on it. Sarah, it's such an important point that we all have to kind of create our own awareness and recognize where we're at in the journey for racial equity, because there's so much more work to be done, no matter where you come from. Really important. Sarah, tell me a little bit about how your story and your evolution to ICRW, how that really kind of shaped the work of ICRW and the lens that you use in your applied research.
Okay, that's a great question. So the International Center for Research on Women is a global applied research institute. And me and my team, every day is about data. It's about generating evidence. It's about informing policy debates, trying to really influence investment strategy, how to optimize services for women and girls. And so I think the fact that I come from a development background, 11 years working with CARE on the ground in communities, really helped me develop a very participatory approach to development. You want development to be an amplifier for people's voices because they understand the issues that they are confronting in their communities. They know what's worked, they know what hasn't worked, they have aspirations, they have ideas about how to move forward. In listening to people, and then in helping them amplify their voices by helping gather the right data that they may need to make those convincing arguments. This is very strong value that I brought to ICRW. And then if you think about all the work that I had done, in my career, looking at gender equity and now racial justice, it is just so clear to me that you have to understand people from all of their dimensions, all of their identities, right? We have layered identities, and our identities evolve, as we go through our day. We're a mother, we're a sister, we're a president, we're a board member, we're a community member. And that changes the way that we think about our role and how we can create change. So it was a very natural thing, I think, at ICRW, especially as I came into the presidency about 11 years ago, was to really, as a strategy, look at development, look at practice, and figure out how could we as ICRW influence practice in the moment. Research is wonderful, but academic research that produces all of these wonderful peer-reviewed journal articles, that's great. We need to build a field. But we need answers right now. We have problems right now that need insights, that need data. And then we need to be able to adapt, change, modify strategy, and know if we're making progress, yes or no. Because you don't want to keep putting in money in things that aren't creating the kind of change we're looking for. And if we see that change is happening, you want to double that investment, right? You want to intensify that investment. So it's a very pragmatic lens, I think, that I bring to ICRW, and it really truly is. And I appreciated the way that you framed it. It's about who I am as a person, the things that I value so deeply in my own life, and then how I've been able to converge, those elements with my professional persona, and then with ICRW, with an amazing team that I work with, actually bring it forward and create the change we want to see.
Absolutely. And Sarah, tell me a little bit about some of the issues that you have been most passionate about since you've been at ICRW, and feel like you've had, whether it was that early data or other kinds of findings, have had a real global impact. I think of ending girls' marriage, child marriage, but I'm sure there's others. Share with us a little bit about kind of the impact that you've made that you're most proud of.
Oh, I appreciate the question. And it's not just me, it's me and a whole team of people and our partners on the ground, and ICRW would be nothing without its amazing staff assets and its partners. It's just the way the world works. But yes, ending child marriage. 18 years ago, it was ICRW that basically looked at demographic data and realized that there was a whole generation of girls missing in the population of India, and trying to understand what was the genesis of this incredible demographic situation. And it was very cultural. It was about son preference and daughter neglect. And so starting with some very, I'm not going to say simple, but I'll say straightforward demographic analysis, then really building out a research agenda that would help excavate under those statistics, right? Statistics only go so far in helping us understand an issue. It's qualitative research, it's talking with people, it's talking with government authorities, it's talking with other experts that we begin to really understand what are the factors that are creating, that particular statistic, the anomaly, right, that we're seeing in our communities. So that work has been ongoing, and we've done amazing work as ICRW in terms of policy reform, practice reform, and in fact, until COVID-19, as a global community, we really could track how the collective efforts of ICRW and its partners were having a positive impact on the number of child marriages that were occurring, across the world. And that was a very positive thing. COVID-19 as this amazing disruptive crisis, right? Social economic disruption has just brought a lot of that progress back, and not just in terms of child marriage, but school attendance for girls, nutrition. You could just look at the whole development goals and you realize that we've regressed. And so now what's the role of research in this moment? And that's to understand, where are we on that continuum of progress, and what do we need to do in the next month, the next 6 months, the next year, to try and jumpstart, right, and get us back to where we were and get us beyond. It can be better, right? Let's not settle for just making it back to where the goal line was a year ago, 14 months ago. So I think that that's emblematic of the kind of work that we've done at ICRW. Personally, and I think you know this, Scott, my absolute favorite project has been working in India with middle school students, in the public school, and introducing new kinds of curriculum that just help them reflect about who they are as people. What is the ideal boy? What is the ideal girl? Are these healthy behaviors? Are we different? Are we so different in terms of being people that, violence against women and girls, or saying that girls have to stay at home and be, housekeepers and things like that? How do we change those gender norms? And we have been so successful over the past 10 years. We can actually measure that. And now what we want to understand is, can we take this model and now adapt and replicate it for communities even here in the United States? And so it's been our work with Anacostia High School in Ward 8 that has just inspired me beyond belief, working with the school authorities and the teachers and the students, who are amazing, really using applied research to help them tell the story of what has it been like doing remote learning for the past year. What are they worried about when they come back to school? What kind of support do they need, so that they can meet their aspirations? It's a labor of love. And for me, this is the perfect intersection of gender and racial justice, because Ward 8 is unfortunately a disadvantaged community, 98% African American. There's a lot of conditions of poverty, that are manifest in the community. So working with teachers and students to navigate all of that, you just get a sense every day that you're making a contribution, and that's hugely satisfying.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And also, I think really speaks to the fact that all around the world, we are connected to each other in these issues, and that with leadership such as what you're providing, that you can bring best practices from around the world to similar problems.
Exactly.
Sarah, before we let you go, can share with us your counsel, your advice for others who are really wanting to use their story and their experiences to make a global impact?
I think it's really important, especially at this particular moment in our history, in the history of the world, in the history of the US, find the issue that just sparks your passion, your commitment, where you feel that there is an injustice. Because what we've seen over the past 14 months, of course, after the murder of George Floyd, and the power of people, right, to manifest and to get out there and say, no, it's not all right. Voice is so important, and we all have a voice. It's a matter of raising the voice, and in a constructive way, and building on what others, are saying, and moving forward. And voice and vote. That's what we have available to us, in terms of making the kind of change we know that needs to be done. So it's time for, I think, courageous conversations with yourself, with family members, with friends. Find the group that resonates with what it is you hope to achieve, because one person alone is not going to be able to do as much as many of us together. So that's my formula for creating global impact. It's really finding what you believe in deeply, become informed, find the right platform where you can really contribute positively, and then just give it your all, because it pays back. It pays back. The satisfaction is just unbelievable.
Well, Dr. Sarah Kambou, we are so fortunate that you took your story and your journey and chose to be the voice of women and girls all around the world, and the world is better for it. Thank you so much for all you do and continue to do.
God, I thank you. Thank you so much.